Marlies. She's a PhD student in the Department of Neuroscience at KU Leuven. But far more interesting, well, I think it's more interesting. She's ending her studies as a woodworker. I find it very impressive. The last thing she made was a kitchen, stuff for in the kitchen. And the first thing was a saloon table. So next up, she will come to my house to fabricate stuff. So we need to talk about this afterwards. She lives in Brussels. She likes beers, and you know, some of you know, that I'm always looking for the perfect match for beers. So her favorite beers are Triple de Fort, Omer, so it's almost yes, but then she answered Zinnebier, and that's not on my list. So unfortunately, I'm still looking for the perfect match. So her talk will be about listening to brainwaves.
Okay, so thanks for the introduction. My name is Marlies, I'm a PhD student at KU Leuven. And in my project, we look at brainwaves to see whether someone listened, or more specifically, whether they understand speech. So understanding speech is a very complex neural process. It relies on integration of various different brain regions. So you have acoustical processing in subcortical areas, word concepts and phoneme concepts are segmented in temporal regions, and higher level language processing takes place in the higher levels of the cortex. But only if all these stages in the auditory pathway are successful, only then speech understanding can be achieved. But what if you have a deficit in understanding speech? Well, you can go to the audiologist and they can rely on a battery of different tests. For example, the pure tone audiometry, which you probably know, like raise a hand whenever you hear the tone. But they also can rely on sentence recall tests, meaning that they present to you a sentence with some noise and they ask you to recall the sentence. And depending on how much word you answered or you recalled correctly, the audiologist can get some insight in how much speech you can understand. But these kind of tests have disadvantages. First, these tones and those standalone sentences, they are nothing like day-to-day listening environments. There is background noise from people talking or cars outside. Well, these do not mimic, or these situations are not mimicked by these tests. Another disadvantage is that one of such a test alone cannot pinpoint the origin of the deficit. Is it situated in peripheral areas, and can the patient be helped with a hearing aid? Or is it situated in more cortical regions, and can the patient benefit from language therapy? And another disadvantage is that some populations are excluded. Think about patients who are locked in, or very young children with a limited attention span, or persons with aphasia. Although they might have understood the sentence, they might not be able to recall the sentence. So to overcome these issues, we try to look at the brain signals to see whether or not someone understands speech. And to do so, we rely on a phenomenon called neural tracking. So neural tracking is a phenomenon that if you present speech to a participant, and meanwhile you record the brainwaves, you can actually see that certain aspects of the presented speech are also present in the measured EEG signals. So how do we start extracting this phenomenon? So first it starts all with the participant. Here's my youngest sister, and we're going to analyze her brain signals. So we hooked her up to the EEG system, and we can record her brain waves. We make her listen to audible speech. And from that audible speech, we can extract multiple features, going from acoustical features, which really resemble the continuous acoustic energy, or linguistical features, derived from the content of the presented speech. By combining the speech features and the EEG recording, you can then map them to each other and or create a temporal response function. And this temporal response function is actually some kind of brain model which tells you how the brain responds to the different speech features. So for this talk, as I'm interested in understanding speech, We will look at linguistic features, more specifically the word surprisal feature. Meaning that if I tell you the sentence, every morning I drink my coffee with milk and I say socks, then you would be very surprised because that would be a very interesting to do. But if I say I drink it with milk and sugar, then you're predicting already the upcoming words, so the information value of sugar is way lower than socks. So sugar doesn't contribute to the context, while socks would. So let's look at the temporal response function to word surprisal. So this is the brain signal to word surprisal for a central region, and what you then see is that there is a clear negativity around 400 milliseconds. This is for normal hearing speakers who listen to audiobook speech. But then I normally get the answer, yes, but this is audiobook speech and it was fully intelligible. What happens if you twist it around and make it a bit more unintelligible and make it more challenging to understand? So that's what we did. We created a paradigm where we speeded up the speech material, and as it became faster and faster, it became way more difficult to actually understand the speech. As a remark, the next plot is very noisy because I used a quarter of the data that I presented here. Oops. So what we show here is that the same temporal response function, the negativity is still there for the yellow tones, which are the low speech rates which the participants can understood. As it becomes faster and faster and goes to the blue shades, it cannot be understood, and the TRFs become not significantly different from zero. Similarly, this negativity across the head, it shifts for the fastest speech rate to frontal areas, and this characteristic topography is not observed anymore. So what this actually indicates that this kind of topography around 400 milliseconds might give us some insight in whether or not you understood the speech. But of course, we're not there yet. We want to optimize the amount of data, make it more reliable and robust. It should work on a subject-specific level, while now only shows the population level. But in the end, I think this might be a good tool to study how language develops and how language is processed in populations with non-neurotypical background. Think about dyslexia, autism, or aphasia. So with that, I would like to wrap up. I'm happy to take